So today I'm going to be attempting to review for you and show you in detail a sword with S5 Super Steel. That's right, guys. This sword was given to me as a sample to bring to you guys to review and do hard testing on from RVA Katana. This is a Cloudhammer S5 sword. Now, I don't know the pricing on any of this or anything like that in terms of how this build is going to be in terms of a retail price. John, if you're in the chat, if you can kind of answer that and put that in if you would like, and just give people an idea if they wanted to purchase this exact sword with these fittings and this type of configuration, what exactly that would be. So guys, before we go any further, we have to talk about RVA Katana. Now, one thing that I am lacking here in my area of New York area, you're not going to find any sword shops that are selling knives, buoys, katana, and things like that, European swords. In Virginia, here in the States, there's RVA Katana. John and Scott also helps running the place. He's also a sensei, and they run sword classes, you know, within the realm of the place. But within the last couple of years, guys, RVA Katana has grown by leaps and bounds. I mean, if you haven't seen his YouTube lives or his YouTube channel, his channel blew up. He's got an amazing assortment that he's able to basically sell you and ship to you from the States, you know, from state to state, you know, in good old Virginia. They're very knowledgeable guys. They have everything from anime all the way up to Nihanto, okay? All types of swords, many different good brands. They also carry Cat Siberia, Cloudhammer, of course. They're exclusive dealer of Cloudhammer here in the States. You'll find European swords, you'll find anime, you'll find high-end katana, you'll find many different types of weaponry and things like that. And I think it's definitely going to be a good one-stop shop for you to definitely be able to get one of them also on the phone. John's, again, will help you find the sword that you want. So shout out to RVA Katana. Shout out to what they do for the community. Thank you for sending me also this beautiful S5 Katana for review. All of your sword and katana needs, European or Japanese or Chinese, of course. They have a wide range, wide possibilities there, so definitely check them out. First things first, guys, before we do any cutting or anything like that, I have a couple different things that I want to do with this sword. But before I get into that, guys, a little disclosure. I am not a practicing practitioner. I wish to be one day, but at this point, I'm coming to you kind of as a novice, for somebody who's been around swords for a little bit, can swing a sword, can cut with it, can give you an honest opinion from being around many different types of swords. That's where I'm coming from in this video. So just to let you know that before you watch any further. Awareness to our U.S. veterans. Hashtag 22 Day No More. Pleasantly surprised, guys. This is actually a really nice fit and finish sword. Right off the bat, no rattle, okay, in the saya. One, it's not to say that it's not perfect. It is a little tight, okay, but it did kind of wear in. You can see how you got to force it in or just kind of get it in there. But I'd rather have something that's tight than loose because it will wear itself in. Because even as I've been using it here and there, because at this point, I kind of did a hard use review on this sword, and hint, hint, it did survive. But there's no rattle. It's a really great fit of the blade into the saya. Yeah, so that's one thing I've been saying about Cloudhammer really from the very beginning. They're listening to the reviews, they're listening to the comments, they're listening, and they're looking to improve. They're a fairly new company. I know the owner has been around swords for a very, very long time, but they're a fairly new company in terms of dealing with the public like this. Basically improved a lot, and I see with this sword in terms of the fit and finish, they took whatever they do best in terms of the sukamaki, the leather work, and things like that, that beautiful jacket, comfortable leather, and then they improved things that I complained about personally was the fuchi, the collaring. Everything kind of lines up very, very nicely now, and there's nothing that kind of would, you know, bite into your hand or be uncomfortable aesthetically. It just looks a lot better, and it's held up. It held up to a lot of tough punishment here where I don't think anything is pretty loose or anything like that, and you'll see basically how much I put this sword through. One thing that they have been doing all along is basically giving you some really beautiful, very strong and resilient blades. I haven't had a Cloudhammer blade yet that, you know, failed on me to a point where I would be alarmed. They all pretty much handle themselves pretty well, and this being S5, I was, you know, really impressed with, you know, spoiler alert, I was really impressed with the performance of it, how it kind of matches up its expectations to what S5 is and why they're calling it a super steel today. It's a really nice job on the casting work. Whoever is doing their casting, I'm a pretty big fan of Cloudhammer'S casting. I like it. It's clean. It's not muddy. It's not obviously handmade, but it's really well done. It glimmers in the light. It catches the light. It looks great, and the transitions on this kasha is good, where the ito is overlapping and it's not the other way around, and it felt very comfortable as I was using it. The Suka comes in at around 10.5 inches. It has real jacket leather ito. The diamonds are all fairly even. The race skin is pretty standard, but pretty good in terms of the quality. It's pretty consistent. Suka style is a standard. It's called Imogata is the style, and that means a standard Suba. I personally like the Haiichi or the Riko. The Haiichi comes in a curve at the bottom and straight here, and the Riko is all hourglass shape, but this is a pretty standard, kind of Suka, and they do a good job, and I felt, pretty comfortable kind of holding it. Then if you go to the Fuji, guys, big improvement with the Fuji, big improvement to the fact where the transitions are done very well. And again, it makes me excited to see that they're improving, because this was a problem I had on many different sword models that they sent me. They had a miss, the Fuji collar was definitely misaligned to Suka. So unless they increase the size of the Suka or the collars or whatever it is, it doesn't matter to me. I can see that basically transitions are great and it feels really good in the hand. And if you go to the Suba, guys, this is like a flower petal, bird on a stalk type of thing, flowers and birds. I like it. I like the little gold tones of the rose petals. I like the detail of also the bird. Okay, the feather, as you can see, the feather details of the bird look really nice. I just, it's iron. It's not it's a metal alloy. I'm sorry, it's not iron. It's a metal alloy, but that's perfectly fine. It's still rigid. It's still done well, and the casting was done well. It's not an oversized Suba. It's a pretty good size. Very well made saya. I like the aside from like a little scratch in the paint, and maybe that's probably why they sent it to me as a sample. It's a very nice work on this saya. Not a fingerprint magnet. It's black with like a silver dust or something like that, silver spackle. But it looks really beautiful. Almost looks like a two-tone type of thing going on, where it's like two different tones of varnish, one underneath and one on top. I just like the work that they did on it. It's smooth, it's attractive looking, and it's got a great fit. There's no rattle, and I love no rattle. It just feels like it's more unibody, and it's done with great quality when there's no rattle. It's passable. It could be done better, but it's very good. And the fact that however they kind of shape this, how this fits, and it doesn't rattle, and it has a great tight suction fit on it. They did a good job with it. So aesthetically, it's standard, but it does more important the job of keeping the sword in place and fitting over the habaki. The habaki is it's different. It's a silver habaki. I like the color tones. The Cloudhammer'S always kind of did a good job in terms of sending out sample swords with picking the right pieces that everything kind of matches up really well. The silver, the habaki, it's got a little bit of fingernail space, but it's fit pretty well. But what impresses me the most, guys, the amount of friction that I did during the testing, and this is again after the testing, and the blade is in really good shape. I mean, I cleaned it off. You got a couple little blemishes or scratches and stuff like that, but there's no chips or anything like that, no bends, no warps, no rollovers or anything. The tip is still fine. Everything looks great, and the fact that the Suba, everything is tight, there's no rattle of anything in the sword. It impresses me the most that after all of the pressure that I put into it and hitting really hard targets, the fact that everything stays in place is pretty impressive. Even the seppas are also in silver. It just matches up the aesthetic of the sword extremely well. They did a nice job. I think this is a very handsome looking sword, especially with that blue, that really nice blue type of color on the ito. It just and you have also the Segeo, which when we first got it, had a nice knot, but it's a pretty good quality Segeo rope, as is on most of the Cloudhammer swords I got. Of course, the Shiradomes I took off because they weren't glued in, but if you need them, you want to glue them on, you're always able to do that. But also the saya itself is pretty good quality. It's not a lightweight, like crappy piece of wood, because the overall length is 40.5 inches. The weight of the sword is about 2 pounds and 20 ounces. It's not a light and nimble sword, but it handles pretty much the same as all the Cloudhammer swords I've handled. They're not light swords, but they're well balanced, and you have control of the tip. So you feel like they're going to be heavier in the hands, but they just kind of, when you swing it, it kind of just balances up. I think it has a POB at around 5 inches, 4.5, 5 inches is the POB, which is satisfactory. It'll definitely do the job, but I just feel like it is a little bit of a heftier sword. And being S5, I don't know if there's a weight differential there. I'm not sure if that is. If anybody knows, or if John knows, let me know. But this just feels a little bit more, weightier in the hand. But again, balanced enough where it's distributed enough where you have control. Are you going to do crazy trick cuts with this thing? Probably not. But for doing great heavy cutting, I think the weight is very good. This basically gives you, this is about 22-ounce saya. It's a good quality piece of wood. Everything is good quality in terms of even the suka and everything that they give you, and the fitting so far, very, very impressed with it. So let's talk about the blade itself. The blade itself comes in, I measured it exactly around 27.5 inches long. It's got a multi-haba of around 1.21 inches. It's about 6.8 inches thickness at the spine, and it has a distal taper, obviously, that goes up to the tip from there. It's a beautiful mirror polish. Even after cutting, it's nothing mirrored the polish. It's a beautiful mirror polish. Obviously, S5 is a through hardened blade. You can't get a differentially hardened S5 because of the way it's got to be heat treated. The sorry I measured in at somewhere about 1 3/4 inches. It's got a pretty good sorry. S5 is also known as S5 shock resisting tool steel. It's like a medium carbon based steel, primarily oil hardened, but water is also has been used. It can be difficult as it needs to be heated slowly, about 400 degrees Fahrenheit per hour, and it has to be cooled slowly at around 50 degrees per hour as a deduction. So it's very temperamental as far as working with S5. You got to be able to heat it and cool it the right way. You're not going to get the right mixture to give you the S5 in terms of the properties that you're looking for, because if not, it might be too brittle and might crack and break. And this, so far, I think it has been heat treated very well. S5 historically is very tough and can handle shock, but in terms of basically holding up, it definitely held up, and it definitely, I'm pretty convinced as far as the power of S5. Okay, so major highlights with this sword is the Tsukamaki, that beautiful jacket leather. The S5 steel is obviously the keynote speaker. I mean, pretty much the outspoken priority of this sword is to have an S5 sword. But the fact that you have a really good steel that's holding up, a really good super steel, you have also great fittings, great fit and finish, everything matched up. The artistic appeal of it is excellent, and it's a tough sword. So guys, in terms of cutting with this sword, my purpose with this sword is not to bring it to failure, because again, that's not really something that I do, and I'm not equipped for it yet. I may bring it to failure one day, but I wanted to kind of cut normal materials with it, but more harder, like kind of the harder materials that you would not normally cut with, just to show you the toughness of the sword. Tatami and bamboo. But the bamboo that I cut with was also a completely dried out bamboo. It's not fresh, not green, completely dried out, which makes it very hard to cut, and also a little bit elasticy. It's hard to describe, but it's a very hard material to cut. And it can also do a number on the edge if you don't have a sword that can cut through harder materials like that. So I tried to use a couple pieces of hard bamboo, had a tough time getting through that. And then I also went with tatami mats, but I did a solid double roll of tatami mats. Anytime you kind of double roll, triple roll, I mean, it started getting very, very hard. And I did spent a lot of time kind of soaking it, probably around 5 hours. So it came out really kind of like just like a rock. So I wanted to get best possible harder materials to do on normal cutting. And after that, more abusive materials where you can see basically the absolute toughness of the S5 and how resilient it is, and also how shock absorbing it is, which really, really impressed me, I think, most of anything else. So guys, I didn't have any pool noodles, so available to me when I was doing the video, but I wanted to initially use Punals to show you, like the initial sharpness out of the box of the blade. And this thing came really, really sharp. I did some some quick paper cuts to show you how good hair popping sharp, the blade was. Could it be sharper? Yeah, but it was definitely sharp enough to be able to use and cut with. Actually, it was probably one of the sharper edges that I've gotten from Cloudhammer, and you can see how it's slicing through the paper pretty well. So kudos to them also for improving the sharpness level of their swords coming to us, because that was also a complaint that we all had with their first round. Typical water bottle cuts, guys. Couple misaligned cuts there, but again, first time I had the sword in my hand, so there's a little bit getting used to, but I was able to still pick it up because it was very familiar to me, like with other Cloudhammer swords, and be able to successfully cut through a couple different water bottles. But that's just peanut stuff, guys. That should show you the edge of the blade and how it's getting through the plastic with no problem. How initially the blade feels, the sword feels in terms of changing direction, which it was pretty good. So now, guys, we went with the really tough dried out bamboo. This bamboo was originally given to me from Samurai Bird, came from Katana land. It had obviously dried up completely. So, and Bird can answer it for you. It can tell you also in the chat. Deal with completely dried out bamboo. It can damage your blade, but it could also be very hard and resilient to cut, which I even had a hard time kind of getting through it. Checking the edge after I did the bamboo cuts, it was there was no damage. A couple scratches, some blemishes. Then the tatami mats, again, double roll. I never did a double roll before. They were definitely very hard to cut. It's tough. But I was actually, that was my purpose. My purpose to kind of really just get into materials that I was going to have a hard time with, and I felt like I needed to push the sword even more that I would normally push it, just to try and get the cut out of it. And that's exactly what I did with the bamboo, and that's exactly what happened with the tatami mats. So after some cuts where I really didn't put enough oomph into it, I kind of really put it into one of the last, one or two cuts, and I was able to really cut through it. But again, I was really trying to force the sword to cut through some really hard material to see if I couldn't find a way to get a chip or a bend or anything like that I would notice. Not that I was trying to, but I wanted to kind of see how strong S5 actually is. All right, so those are the regular cuts, guys. The bottles, hard tatami mats, hard bamboo. I wanted to get through that. It came through it with no problem. I was able to kind of just push the sword through it, kind of had a couple successful cuts, and I was satisfied. Now I wanted to kind of, at this point, I'm trying to push the sword a little bit harder. So I actually took a solid 4x4 post, okay, brand new, pressurized wood from Home Depot, and I wanted to kind of really just go to town with the edge and to see if I can't get some really good solid hits into that wood and see how the sword would make out. And I wasn't going easy on it, guys. I was really trying to get into the wood and really try to make some damage into the wood and really push the edge as much as possible. And at the end, guys, I was pretty impressed with how much cutting it did into the wood. It was a couple really good strikes that I had, and I was pushing it hard, and it really cut into the wood pretty well, and it looked good. It did a really nice job. More so, I thought it was going to kind of just sink into the wood, and I wasn't able to get it out, but I was able to really, do some good straight chopping. Obviously, listen, you're not chopping wood with a katana. That's not what it's for. But we're also trying to, go to the extreme to see basically how strong this actual blade is. I just got to say, everything is still pretty tight. Nothing loosened up, the habaki, the suba, because as I was cutting, I did not feel the vibrations from the impact of the wood into the handle. I didn't feel like it was traveling. So it did feel like, honestly, the blade did absorb a lot of the pressure or the friction
from the impact of the wood. And if I'm looking at this, I did clean this up with alcohol. There, you know, other than some blemishes and scratches, I'm not seeing any chips, any bends, any rolls, nothing that really would alarm me on the edge. The edge looks absolutely fine. But we're going to go to the next stage of the test and try to get hit the spine with some stone. And this one I'm a little bit nervous about. I'm going to hit the spine of the sword into this solid paver stone to see how the shock absorption is, if it takes any sets, any bends, any rolls, any chips, or if there's any cracks that form. And that'll conclude pretty much my test, you know, not bringing it to destruction, but my test to see how strong, how tough the actual S5 is.
Everything is still so tight is because the blade really did absorb a lot of the shock of hitting into those hard materials.
Maybe there's some scratches. It looks fine. I don't see any cracks, anything that chipped off the spine. It looks as if the spine looks fine still, other than, again, some abrasions from the stone. It looks as if it's still in pretty good shape, and it's there's no bends or sets or anything like that. Not really seeing any chips other than maybe some scratches at the point of impact of the stone. So the S5 is definitely doing what it's supposed to do. It's actually pretty tough. Now, if I really wanted to push this hard and bring it to breakage, I could probably go with the point and maybe break this, but that's not what I want to do because I have other things planned with this S5 in the future.
So I gave it a couple really nice smacks into the stone. And it actually marred up the stone a little bit. And you can see basically how you have some markings from the Munet into the stone. But the beauty of it is when you look at the actual edge, the Munet, aside from obviously some obvious surface scratches from the stone, there's no damage, no cracks or anything that I can see. And I would imagine if I go into it with a microscope, I'm only going to see some deeper scratches from the stone, but no cracks or nothing that traveled or bent the blade or did anything to damage the blade. It's, I mean, the blade is almost like it's still brand new. I mean, the sharpness level is still pretty good. I mean, I know that the hardness level compared to some other steels is not as good in terms of the edge retention, but the edge retention actually held up pretty well. I mean, I am going to do a lot more cutting with this, but I'm actually pretty impressed with the sharpness level of the sword after cutting all those hard materials. It wasn't a lot, but as I go in with it, I'll let you know how the edge retention stays. But so far, so good with a hard cutting session. The edge retention is still there. No chips, no bends, no rolls, and no vibrations that you would imagine the vibrations would kind of travel up down the blade into the handle and kind of saw it really just dislodging all the seppas and the subas and stuff like that. Shock absorption, check. Toughness of the blade, check. No chips, no edge damage or anything like that. Couple blemishes, but again, a little metal polish, you'll probably take it right out. I'll probably be able to clean up the Munet with the scratches and stuff. But yeah, I mean, with whatever abuse or whatever I put into, in conclusion, guys, I think S5 is pretty much all it's hyped up to be. It's a very good, strong steel. I didn't bring it to failure, obviously. I may do that one day, but I do have other plans for this S5. I do have another S5 coming in from another company that shall remain nameless at this point, but I wanted to kind of put this S5 from Cloudhammer, which is now very proven, to another S5 from another company, because I have heard that it's just not all companies heat treat S5 the same. So let's see if this company is going to hold up in terms of the S5 department compared to what Cloudhammer has. So I do have some more plans in the works with this S5 steel. But if you are interested in S5 steel and you want something that's going to be very resilient, very tough, that will be forgiving to bad cuts and will be able to get through some hard materials without much worry of this thing breaking on you, I think S5 is definitely the steel for you. And this particular setup in terms of the Fuji, the Kasha, and all that, I guess you can request it from John from RVA. You can let him know the exact pieces that you saw in my video if you want this exact same sword, because I think this is really a very, very attractive sword in terms of the color motif and everything. That beautiful mirror polish, great fittings, great fit and finish, big improvement, great sharp edge, and to boot, you know, S5 steel, and you got a great fitting of the sword into the saya with no rattle. Very impressed. Good job, Cloudhammer. I like this rendition. I don't really have any complaints for the most part, other than maybe the tightness out of the box. But again, this is breaking down. That's not even really a complaint. Great fitting, great fit and finish, great improvement, great work on the S5 steel. Yeah, I definitely would recommend, if you guys are interested in a very powerful steel with a great fit and finish sword, check out this Cloudhammer S5 and check out RVA Katana, and I'm sure they'll help you out whatever you need. So thanks for watching, guys, and before you leave, definitely take a look at these videos coming up next. So this is the S5 from Cloudhammer, provided to me from RVA Katana. More on this sword coming, side-to-side comparisons, more cutting, more good stuff. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good evening or have a good day. See you when I see you on the next sword and knife video. Peace out, everybody. Ciao.